Good evening and welcome to the breakout room in number 3. This breakout room is going to be focusing on parents with students in the secondary grades, which are from grade 9 to 12. My name is Mangaljit Dab. I am the ex officio of PIC, and also I'm joined here with my colleague who is secretary of PIC, Tabassum Anwar. Today, our facilitator is going to be Nicole Hooten. Nicole is a registered member of the College of Psychologists of Ontario, and she has completed her Master's in Education from the University of Western Ontario. She has several years of experience working with children and adolescents. Nicole, please accept our invitation to please help us with this event today.
Thank you. Okay, shall we get started?
Please.
Okay. All right. Can I have the next slide, please? Perfect. Okay. So our first big question is, what's the difference between mental health and mental illness? The truth is the terms mental health and mental illness are sometimes confused. We're going to watch a quick video together that will help us answer this question. Now, while you're watching the video, I want you to think of some things in your lives that can help promote positive mental health. If you like, there is a Q&A section that you yourself can type, 1 or 2 word answers about what you do in your household that promotes positive mental health. Okay, so we'll watch the video. Next slide, please. Go ahead with the video.
I think we're having some technical difficulty. We'll maybe restart this video. Just give us a few minutes, please.
Negatively impact. Mental health is an important part of our overall well-being and is something we all can play a role in addressing. It's a subject that deserves our attention. According to Statistics Canada, 1 in 3 Canadians will experience one of 6 mental illnesses or substance use disorders in their lifetime. Other research for the Mental Health Commission of Canada shows that in any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental illness or addiction. Awareness has been raised about the importance of helping those experiencing mental illness to get access to treatments that will improve their mental health. But what about the 4 in 5, or 80% of the population, who will not experience a mental illness or an addiction? What about their mental health? Are they mentally healthy? First, what is mental health? There is some confusion about what mental health means, and this can have an impact on how we address mental health. For example, a lot of people think that when we talk about mental health, we're talking about mental illness, that these subjects are one and the same. Really, mental health and mental illness are two different things. Mental illnesses are conditions where our thinking, mood, and behaviors severely and negatively impact how we function in our lives. Mental illnesses can include depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and other mood disorders. Mental health, on the other hand, like the term health, is a positive concept. It relates to our ability to enjoy life and to manage it in ways that help us reach our goals and cope with stresses. It's a sense of spiritual and emotional well-being. This means mental health is more than the absence of mental illness. Now, if mental health and mental illness are two different ideas, what's the relationship to one another? Sometimes people picture mental health and mental illness being two ends of a continuum, as if one is the opposite of the other. But a lot of research shows that we should think about mental health and mental illness as separate yet interconnected concepts that need to be looked at, measured, and responded to differently. We should think of them on two separate continua. So here's what the mental health and mental illness continua really look like. On the mental illness continuum, one end runs from severe mental illness to no mental illness. On the mental health continuum, one end runs from poor mental health to good mental health. This model shows that a person without mental illness is not necessarily mentally healthy. They may be feeling down or experiencing a high level of stress because of life's circumstances. But it also shows us that we can all strive for good mental health, that even individuals with mental illness can have good mental health. Let me give you an example. This is Tara. Tara has been diagnosed with depression, a potentially severe mental illness. However, her depression is now under control. She's on medication and sees her psychotherapist regularly. She likes her job, feels capable of completing her work, and is able to eat right, sleep well, and exercise. She feels comfortable and respected in the places where she lives and works, and she feels like people in her life love her and understand her. Despite her mental illness, Tara has good mental health. So how do we promote mental health? How do we make more people mentally healthy? While there are things we can do to take care of our own mental health, the community where we live, work, and play has a big impact on our mental health. A community can promote mental health when its members have access to good jobs, incomes, and housing. A mentally healthy community makes people feel safe and secure and like they belong because it's inclusive of people with different ages, backgrounds, genders, languages, and sexualities. There are simple things that you can do to help create a community that is mentally healthy. Know and accept that everyone faces daily challenges. Get involved in your community and give back. Support and include different types of people in your community. Finally, there are many things that you can do to take care of your own mental health, whether you have a mental illness or not. Know and accept that life can be challenging. Create purpose in your life by learning and trying new activities, like starting a hobby and setting realistic goals. Create healthy, trusting relationships with people who accept and support you. Know and accept your strengths and weaknesses. Accept yourself and others. It's the basis of self-esteem. And learn to recognize and understand that you and others have good and bad feelings. By increasing good mental health, all of these things contribute to the overall health of Canadians. Like the World Health Organization famously said, there is no health without mental health.
All right, that's fantastic. Can we go to the next slide, please? Great. Okay. So that was a great video. So according to the World Health Organization, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. Indigenous teachings remind us that mental wellness is a balance of the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional parts of ourselves. And it is enriched when individuals experience purpose, hope, belonging, and meaning in their lives. The video reminds us that a person who lives with a mental illness can experience good mental health. And it's also true that we can all experience times of poor mental health without a mental health condition. When we face difficult times, loss, great stress, things like that, we can absolutely experience poor mental health. A child or teen's mental health is just as important as their physical health when it comes to school, making friends, and in general in life. And the same is true for adults. We all need to take good care of our mental health. Next slide, please. Okay. So what impacts to children, youth, and caregivers? What are the impacts to children, youth, and caregivers over the last year or so through the pandemic? So research has showed and reported that both distress in youth as well as parents have increased. So what are youth saying? Young people are telling us their mental health has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In a survey conducted in the early days of the pandemic, almost 2 out of 3 students said their mental health had gotten worse since the beginning of the pandemic. Over 60% of youth reported feeling a combination of worried, upset, sad, and angry about the abrupt end to the school year, their ability or inability to see their friends, and uncertainty about the future. Overall feeling of a sense of extreme isolation. Okay, so I mentioned youth distress has gone up, and so have parents. So what's going on with the parents? Especially within Peel, where we celebrate a very diverse, ethnically diverse, culturally diverse community, right? And in many of our communities, our extended family is a big part of that, right? It's a part of that picture. Some of us may have our parents, our children's grandparents living at home with us, and we are not only taking care of them, but we are taking care of our own children as well, right? So it feels like we can be caught in the middle, like being in a sandwich kind of, where we're caregiving on both ends. On top of that, many times our extended family are in charge of other sort of household duties, whether that be caregiving or cleaning or meal preparation, things like that. And, with the COVID pandemic, we've also seen an increase of stress because of the removal of the help that extended family used to perform. What the research is showing is that 1 out of 3 caregivers are reporting moderate to high levels of anxiety on a daily basis. The most significant concerns are related to managing your child's virtual learning, managing your child's screen time, managing your children's anxiety and stress, as well as balancing household routines on top of work and just co-parenting together for families that have two caregivers. For parents of young children and those with special needs, many have experienced significant challenges with virtual learning around how to use the screens and the devices, how to maneuver that, not being able to interact with their teachers. And for some of these kids, that bond with their teachers is so important. And of course, not being able to interact with their peers. Parents are having concerns about learning gaps because of virtual learning versus the in-person learning. And they are reporting that a heavy burden falls on the shoulders of these parents or the older siblings who now have to help these younger kids or kids with special needs with their education. Now, the last point on this slide suggests that there is a positive side that we are seeing. Many people have come together, and we have witnessed some amazing stories of caring and collaboration, determination, and hope. Throughout this pandemic, we've seen things like cheering on our frontline workers, right? Standing out in front of your house or your apartment, banging pots and pans and things like that to show your support. We've also seen some property owners waiving rent for families in the time of need. We have collectively seen people support either elderly or people who aren't able to go out and get groceries or run errands and things like that. We have seen the support of the community. And this coming together effect has been shown to have a protective effect on everyone's mental health in times of this shared distress. Notably, although calls to distress and crisis centers such as Kids Help Phone have increased, there is some early data to suggest that mental health presentations to emergency departments have stayed relatively stable during the pandemic. Okay. Next slide, please. So what can parents and caregivers do to support their children's mental health and well-being? Next slide, please. All right. So the first thing is what we call taking our own temperature as parents. What does that mean? Okay. For any of you who have been on an airplane, remember when the flight attendant is doing the safety training, and there's a part where it talks about the oxygen coming down, and it cautions you to first put the mask on yourself before you assist your child or someone who would need some extra assistance. The same thing goes for your own mental health and mental well-being. The thought is that if you yourself are struggling for oxygen, then how can you possibly help someone else? You need to put your mask on first before you can put someone else's on. So it's important to ask yourselves, how am I currently feeling? And how am I coping with my own emotions right now and the demands that are being placed on me? I say this because we as parents need to feel well and be well in order to do well as parents. As you can see on the graphic, there are some days we might feel in the green zone where we're thriving. You're saying to yourself, I got this. While on other days, we may feel more in the red, saying something like, I can't survive, I can't go on another day and all of this. As best we can, it's important to engage with our children the most when our emotions and well-being are when we're feeling more so in the green or the yellow zone. So what does it look like to take care of your own needs as a parent in the middle of a pandemic? What does that look like? We often throw around this term called self-care. It really does put the onus on us as individuals to take care of ourselves. All we have to do is eat enough and get enough sleep and exercise and take bubble baths, right? That all sounds really, really, really nice. But it's a very limited view of what self-care can actually look like, right? I think what I want to do now is sort of introduce, a broader definition, some broader examples of what self-care can be. For instance, self-care can simply be saying no, okay? When you add the stress of the pandemic on top of everything else, it is really just not realistic to think that you're going to be performing in the capacity that you were before the pandemic. And sometimes simply just recognizing that and saying no or not right now is a form of self-care. Self-care can be asking for what you need. Okay, so study after study shows that in most heterosexual partnerships, mothers carry a hefty burden in what we call cognitive load. Essentially, we as moms are in charge of remembering everything from medical appointments, when assignments are due, Valentine's Day cards, things like that. And unfortunately, it is disproportionate. It does generally fall more heavily on the shoulders of moms in, like I said, heterosexual partnerships, okay? So again, self-care can be asking for what you need. Right before this presentation, I was running and throwing in a load of laundry when my husband was upstairs. Really, I should have asked him to do it, but I ran and did it. And, things like that, taking the time to recognize that is so important. Self-care can also be changing your expectations right now, at least in the short term, at least during this time of uncertainty. Above all else, our children needs they need during this time feeling loved and feeling safe. Okay, feeling loved, safe, and feeling supported. It is possible to focus on ways outside of screen time and adhering to strict limits and routines and things like that. It's okay to remove the focus off of that a little bit, as long as, like I said, our children are feeling loved, they're feeling safe, and they're feeling supported. It's about giving yourself some grace during this time and recognizing again that you are not expected to be functioning at the same capacity as you were prior to the pandemic. Next slide, please. Okay, so how can we support our children's mental health in this pandemic? So I'm going to introduce 3 steps. Okay, ultimately, though, I really want to focus on the idea of what's illustrated in the blue box there. Connection before direction, right? We want to make sure as parents, before we jump in and give advice or say something like, it's going to go away soon, or suck it up, come on, just keep going, we want to take the time to recognize what our children are going through, what they are experiencing. So first and foremost, we talk about validating and naming those emotions. Oftentimes, we know our children, sometimes I would like to say better than they know themselves, right? We know their facial expressions. We know the looks in their eyes and how they hold their body, and when maybe they are not as talkative as they were before. We as parents, we recognize that pretty clearly. So the idea is making those observations and posing that to your children. It could just be something like, you seem angry, and you may take a guess, is it because you can't see your friends like before, right? It's first naming the emotion that you suspect your child is experiencing. Now, don't be afraid. You may get it wrong. You may say angry, and it's not anger that your child has experienced. Perhaps it's sadness or worry or something else, and that's okay. Your child will correct you, and most importantly, what you've done is started a conversation about what's going on with them. Now, when you name that emotion and you start having this conversation, this is the time where you start to validate their feelings, empathize with them, realize that they're struggling, and just the mere fact of validating and naming emotions will help them feel supported, and will help them feel like you've heard them, like you've connected with them. Okay. Then step 2, although these all say 1, 1, 1 for some reason, but step 2 would be provide some emotional support. That could be sitting next to them, putting your arm around them, saying, it's normal to feel angry right now. I'm sorry that this is happening. I'm here for you. Again, you're not solving this problem at all. You're just recognizing that you see them, you recognize their pain or their struggle, and regardless, you are here for them. Okay. Again, avoid rushing to fix the problem, especially right now, because it's like our solutions, the bag of tricks that we have are very limited right now. The pandemic, COVID, has really removed a lot of the fixes that we used to have before. If you were missing your friend, all you needed to do is set up a play date, or go hang out with them, or go play basketball or something, and you can't. So a lot of our tools in our toolkit are not available at the moment. So we really can't rely on providing quick fixes during this time. If you can, there are some practical support options. Why don't we do something tonight that will help make you feel better? Watch a movie, play a game. You can Zoom call your cousin or your friend or something like that. We have some limited tricks, but the most important piece, again, is to make that connection with your children. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So we are going to do, in a few minutes, we're going to do a relaxation activity together. So why are relaxation exercises helpful? Well, when stress becomes overwhelming, our body releases hormones causing things like increased heartbeat, shallow, quick breathing, tensed muscles. This is our body's stress response. So when you are noticing stress or big emotions coming up, relaxation activities can help you. They can help take the edge off, slow you down, release muscle tension, and help you feel grounded and be in the present moment. So this poster here is one from a set designed by School Mental Health Ontario. So I think at the end of the sessions, you'll be given either provided a link or a copy of some sort of handout that will have websites and other support options listed there. And this bit.ly at the bottom of the poster of this screen should be there as well. And I would suggest that you take a look, because there are a ton of other examples of relaxation techniques that you can use at home with your child. Okay, so the one we are going to do today is called Tense and Relax. It's an activity to help release tension. Okay, so make yourself comfortable in your seat, wiggle around. Okay, have your feet grounded on the floor if possible. So let's take a moment now, wherever you are, whatever kind of day you've had, to focus on our well-being. Let's begin with a few deep breaths. Deep breath in, and deep breath out. Deep breath in, and deep breath out. Now, squeeze your hands into fists and hold for 1, 2, 3. And now relax your hands. Notice the different feelings of tensed and relaxed. Next, push your shoulders up to your ears, like a turtle going back into a shell. And hold it for 1, 2, 3. And now relax. Let the tension wash away. Now push your heels into the floor and squeeze your toes. For 1, 2, 3, and release, wiggling your toes out. Last, tense your stomach muscles. For 1, 2, and 3, release. Taking another deep breath in, deep breath out. And last time, deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, great job, everyone. We hope you enjoyed doing tense and relax together. Remember, you can do tense and relax anytime, anywhere to help you feel more relaxed. Okay, we're on this slide, great. So in the same way that we try to take care of our physical health, like eating well, drinking water, getting enough sleep, etc., we need to pay attention to our mental health. And we need to not take it for granted, actually. So today we're going to run through our top 5 simple strategies that we all can use to support our mental health. Now, while I talk about each of these, it would be great for you to share any positive things you do as a family or things that you do in your culture that support your well-being. I will check in with the moderator in a bit to hear some of these. So feel free to type in the Q&A whenever something comes to you. So the Big 5 model was developed in the UK, and when practiced regularly, the Big 5 are meant to improve one's sense of personal well-being. As I talk about some examples here, feel free again to share some of the things in the chat. All right, so the first one here on the screen is to connect, okay? So these are activities to build connection with ourselves and one another. Talk and listen, be there for others, feel connected. Strong social ties are essential to our well-being. Even in these COVID times, it's important to stay connected to your friends, family, cultural and faith communities, groups, and teams. Reach out, phone, and text a friend. Maybe during COVID, you've had one of those sort of virtual birthday parties or drive-by birthday parties. Maybe this is a time to connect more to your spiritual life through prayer, journaling, family storytelling. Okay. The next one is to be active. Essentially, it's to move your body, move any way that you like. You can dance, you can walk, you can ride a bike, anything. Well, maybe not in the winter, maybe an indoor bike. Even house cleaning is considered some form of movement. Movement and exercise don't necessarily need to be intense for you to feel good and experience those positive impacts. What is most important is that you discover any activity or an activity that you enjoy, one that suits your level of fitness and mobility. Okay. So again, caregivers, what are some creative ways to be active together as a family that you've tried or that you want to try or you've heard about? The third practice is to keep learning. Embrace new experiences and learn about yourself, your culture, your identity, your values, your passions. Learn skills and strategies to build resilience and cope with stress, perhaps, manage your feelings, stay positive and motivated, and maintain healthy relationships. Giving back. Give your time, your words, your presence. Discover your strengths and your gifts. Give back to those around you, especially those in need. Helping others adds to our own happiness, and it honestly is contagious. I don't know about you, but I've gone through a Tim Hortons drive-through, and the feeling that I get when the person in front of me has paid for my tea is unremarkable. And every time that happens, it reminds me to do it to the person behind me. And it really did brighten my day when it happened. Our last practice is to take notice. Notice the present moment and the simple things that give you joy. Notice your thoughts, feelings, things you are grateful for, and the way you talk to yourself on the inside. Notice also when you might need to reach out for help to stay mentally well. We all need help from time to time. Make it a practice to notice at least one thing you are grateful for each day and spend some time thinking about it. Our minds often go automatically to our problems. It's very easy to dwell on those because essentially we are wired to survive. But we can train our minds to shift by focusing on something we are grateful for. And again, research has shown this to be very helpful for our mental health and for us to feel better. Next slide, please. Okay. When more support may be needed. The third way to support your mental health is to recognize when more help may be needed. So as parents, there's no one better able to understand your child than you. Okay, you know when your child is just what we call not right, when something is off. As a psychologist, I'm often asked to share the most common signs of mental health problems or things to watch out for children and youth. This can include many things, okay? Things like increased irritability, sadness, anxiety, or panic, difficulty falling or staying asleep, undereating, overeating, and accordingly, weight gain, weight loss. If you notice difficulties with concentration or motivation, a pattern of overreacting to minor problems, difficulty bouncing back from stressors, social withdrawal, difficulty getting along with others, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So for parents, I recommend paying attention to 4 different domains, knowing that you know your child the best. So the first one is frequency. How often the behavior is occurring and the situation in which it is occurring. So how often is it happening? For example, experiencing sadness after a death or a loss, even if it's prolonged, is a little bit more understandable and different from just all of a sudden feeling sadness out of the blue. You know, you can't really put your finger on it kind of thing. Duration. How long has this behavior I've been seeing been present? So does it last longer than you would expect? You know, it's normal to perhaps have a little bit of anxiety before a test or an exam, but anxiety that does not go back to normal levels after the exam is done is maybe a little bit more concerning. Intensity. Is the behavior I'm seeing more intense than it was before? Does this big upset behavior seem disproportionate to the situation, right? When we see these big giant meltdowns, tears or slamming doors, and you in your mind you're thinking, whoa, what just happened here? You know, that expression just seems a lot bigger than what the situation called for. Then that maybe some alarm bells should be going off. The impact. How is the behavior I'm seeing impacting my child's life, look at life, their outlook in life? Okay, so you have to look at it from different domains like academic, social, and family, right? How is it impacting all these areas? For kids, you most likely will notice it definitely with the academics, and at home. You'll see it at home as well. But you know, some of you who are well aware of your children's friends will notice, hey, you're not talking to so and so as often before, or how come you're not, you know, engaging the way you used to before. It's different during the pandemic, right? We're limited in terms of social interaction. But if your child used to be a very social person who was always on her or his phone all the time, and all of a sudden they're just sleeping all day, then, you know, again, alarm bells might be going off a little bit that you may want to check in and dive a little bit deeper. And keep in mind, children with special education or communication needs may present differently. You know your child best. So if you're not sure what is to be expected, you may consult with someone from your school team or a professional in your community. Okay, next slide. Okay, the pathway to care, getting help during the pandemic. So we're going to talk about schools in particular. So as a parent, if you are concerned, you can access support from your high school. You know, there's multiple channels. You can definitely speak to an administrator, whether that be the principal or vice principal. Some parents feel comfortable going directly to them for support. You also may have a relationship with your child's guidance counselor. You may know the guidance counselor, by ways of course selection and that sort of thing, but guidance counselors are also there to support children through their mental health and so forth as well, because oftentimes the mental health, their mental well-being may be related to academics. So you have your guidance department who you can also contact. As well, a teacher. Sometimes kids really do have a strong connection with a particular teacher, the one that they're always talking about and going to for emotional support. You can reach out to that teacher as well. All these channels will lead to what we call an ISRC, an in-school, someone can give me the acronym, I've lost it, in-school review committee, in-school review committee, I think it's called, and we meet monthly. And we discuss kids of needs, and oftentimes, thank you, oftentimes guidance counselors, it could be the admin, the teachers, they come to this meeting where PSSP, so professional student services personnel, so that's myself, social work, and in secondary school, sometimes it can be speech and language, but most often it is, to be honest, social work and psychology, who will sit down and hear these needs, and we can then offer to service, provide service to the child or to that family. Okay, so like all schools do have have access to a social worker and psychologist for mental health support. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Community supports. Okay. There are also community supports. So you have a choice. You can access support through school. You also have the option of accessing it through the community. Again, on the handout that you will receive, there should be a list of community supports available to you. There's a number of them offered within Peel. Even if you start off with school support, oftentimes myself or the social worker will then really want to connect you to community agencies. Now, here's just a few. There's family and cultural identity specific community agencies. There's faith leaders. There's family agencies, and then agencies to help support specific mental health needs and behavioral needs, developmental needs for children. Okay. You would also, I also always urge parents to seek support from their family doctor or pediatrician, because that could be a gateway to, possibly seeing a psychiatrist, or sometimes your doctor has great recommendations and referrals for other agencies within the community. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about barriers and opportunities, stigma in particular. So stigma can be a barrier. Stigma is when someone sees you in a negative way because of your mental health struggles. Discrimination is when someone treats you in a negative way because of your mental health struggles. And social stigma and discrimination can make mental health problems worse and stop a person from getting the help that they need. Sometimes people worry they'll be judged or treated differently if they reach out for help. Again, especially within the Peel community, again, being very ethnically and culturally diverse, there's sometimes mental health isn't, or poor mental health is not acknowledged, and in fact buried down, which can be for some a detriment if they actually really do need the support. Okay. As I mentioned, it also may not be a practice within your community to share about personal issues like mental health struggles with others, let alone outside of your family or within a community. Schools are now seen as an excellent environment to prioritize student mental health and deliver mental health services to children and youth. Despite many advancements, though, the mental health needs for all students have not fully been met, especially the mental health and well-being needs of marginalized and racialized students. Often their needs are more poorly understood, poorly served, under-resourced, or delivered in a non-culturally relevant, sensitive, or responsive way. We want to do this work together, and we want to be a part of the solution. And you know, the presentation today is a step in that direction for that. Okay, I think that's my piece over. I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Dab, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for your presentation, and I echo the same sentiments in reference to the cultural differences. Many of the struggles that we face in the Peel district, Peel in general, region of Peel, is that the mental health aspect of supports that are out there, they're culturally sort of tone deaf in some ways, but at the same time, you know, there are uniqueness that are sort of part of those communities, and I truly echo that the work needs to happen in reference to bringing forward more cultural awareness around this, around these issues, especially in the South Asian and Black and Indigenous communities that they make up a large diaspora of Peel. Those being said, I think there's also an opportunity for those communities to pivot as well towards the change to break down some of those barriers. So I think a lot of the conversations that we've had, there is also an aspect of elders, multi-generational. We've been talking about this a lot, where families are multi-generational. And so you had mentioned in some of the comments, and I'm looking at also the comments being posted online in our question and answer sessions. There's a lot of aspects of multi-generational families that are living together, and the stigma sometimes even becomes bigger, that the parents and the grandparents don't want to really talk about mental health in the family. And I think it's very, very important to reach out to the culturally appropriate organizations to help and support and support mental health in general. And I'll move this conversation over to our moderator today, who is Rosa. Please.
Hi, good evening. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole, for some of those very important messages. I really appreciated hearing the message about our own self-care as well, and remembering to do well for our kids. We need to do well for ourselves first. And also to practice grace. I really appreciated that message as well. You know, it's okay to modify our expectations right now, so long as our kids are feeling safe and secure. I really appreciated that message, so thank you. Yes, so my name is Rosa Sist. I'm a social worker and a mental health resource clinician with our board. And for this evening, I'm also the moderator for our Q&A period this evening. And I'm really happy to be part of this very important conversation tonight. Okay, so for those of you who would like to remain for the Q&A period, we only have about 10 minutes, actually a little less than 10 minutes. But feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A feature, and you can find that feature. I think everyone has found it. It says ask a question, so please do. And we have been collecting questions, and of course we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. And that actually includes questions that were coming in previously as well ahead of our presentation tonight. And all the questions are important, and we do have some staff moderators behind the scenes. They may be answering your questions through the chat privately, or they may also read out some of those, or I'll actually read out your questions and have some of the panelists answer them. We've also, in addition to that, we've added some helplines, some resources on this slide, and there's a bit.ly there, and that is a live hyperlink. And any responses to the questions that we're not able to answer tonight, we're going to actually post them on the Peelschools.org website. Okay, so you can find that after tonight's event. And just a reminder that responses are not an actual replacement for support from a helper who might know your family very well and is able to really ask questions and speak to you. So, you know, if you need to do that, there's some great resources out there, and we do, of course, you know, suggest that you speak to your doctor as well. Okay, so our facilitator, Nicole, and other panelists will have an opportunity to respond to some of these questions. And I'll tell you a little bit about who is part of our panel. We have a few of our parent hosts, as you know, from the Parent Involvement Committee, and they'll be able to provide their perspective and also, you know, there to translate. Mangaljit Dab and Tabassum Anwar. We also have Vanessa Maharaj, and she's a school social worker, and Faith Barrett from our psychology department is here with us as well. And from our speech and language department, we have Charlene Brewster and Tanseem Al-Fakir. And last but not least, we have our vice principal from Judith Nyman, Nadine Deer, who can also answer some questions from an administrative perspective tonight. So thank you to all of you for being here. So let's get to some of our questions. So let's start with maybe how do you know, one of the questions that came in, how do you know if something is wrong mentally and if you or your loved ones need help? Nicole, I know you've sort of touched on that. I wondered if you could just, you know, expand on it a little.
Yep, no, of course. That's a great question. So the first step is recognizing whether you or someone else is having difficulty. The first step is to just simply begin paying attention to what you are seeing, the behaviors that are causing you the worry and the concern. Once you begin paying attention to the feelings or the behaviors, you can then consider the 4 different pieces of information that I discussed in the presentation. So 1, the frequency. How often is this feeling or behavior happening? Is it happening more than it did before? Number 2, the duration. How long does this feeling or behavior last? Once it is started, is it becoming harder to recover from it? Do you feel stuck? Number 3, there's the intensity. Does the feeling and behavior seem more intense than before? And 4, the impact. Does the feeling and behavior impact the ability to function each day at home, at school, and with friends and things like that? I believe, Rosa, you in the handout, there should be some resources for parents to utilize to help them find the signs of mental health struggle.
Yes, I will actually post that in right now. There's a great
Perfect.
handout that can actually help. Thank you. There we go. Oh, no, wrong one. So sorry. Oh. I will, give me 1 second. Sorry. There we go. Okay, I will post it right now. There we go. Okay. Oh, I don't see it there. Let me just copy it. And sorry, technology. There we go. Okay, it's there. Okay, thank you so much. And actually, Mangaljit, I wondered if you could actually provide us a parent perspective.
Sure. I think that there's definitely an element of sort of the visual sort of signs, and I think Nicole really put those into perspective really, really well. But we're doing those. I think we know our kid is down. Like we know the barometer is there, and I mean, So I don't think that it requires more mention than that, that we know when things are not right. And I think it's okay to not be perfect at sort of approaching it, but the conversation's happening, and that's really what's really important about it. So Nicole, I think you did a great job of just answering that even earlier. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have another question here. It says here, my son is almost 17 years old and he's always stressed. He always complains, I don't know what to do in life, what's the purpose of life, etc. I wonder if maybe Faith, would you be able to respond to this question?
Hi, yes, I can. Hi. So we've talked a lot about exactly how to recognize and acknowledge our children's feelings. I think that's the most important part of what this question is really asking. The importance of validating your child's feelings to let them know they're not different or wrong for having these feelings. When children say these kinds of thoughts out loud, it's simply because they want to be heard and understood and because they want to receive help. Mm-hmm. The things you can do include listening and noticing the emotion behind their words, reflecting, like Nicola talked about, by acknowledging what they're saying. Sometimes it can almost sound like you're repeating what they're saying. Like it sounds like you're feeling sad, or that it sounds what you're going through is really difficult. The next step, obviously, would be to, if your child needs more help than just what you're able to provide them, connecting them with support outside of the home might be the next step. Your family doctor, a counselor, religious mentor, or other trusted teacher, as well as the in-school professionals. I just want to touch on that there is as well a difference between the passing thoughts of stress and more serious ones. It can be hard to have that conversation with your child about whether they are feeling incredibly distressed or feeling thoughts of suicide or self-harm, but it is an important question to ask as well. So if you need any help with those kinds of conversations, you can always reach out to your school as well, and school-based psychologists and other professionals might be able to help you with having those discussions or having those discussions with your child themselves so that they can help you and your child access the help they need.
Thank you. Thank you, Faith. I've also posted some numbers for Peel Crisis Service. These are crisis services that you can reach out if it's needed, as well as a guide for suicide prevention, and that's for parents and specifically around COVID. So I've posted that in the announcements as well. Tabassum, I'm wondering if you could also give us a perspective, a parent perspective.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Rosa, and thank you, Faith. I think there has been some very good insight in there. So, I mean, I do have a 16-year-old son, and some of the concerns that have been raised, I do share it and with some of my experiences. So some of my suggestions would be, I mean, if you are able to have a conversation where you can actually share some of your life experiences with your children, that might help them connect with you and also kind of share some of those similar uncertainties. I mean, it's a time when they're probably taking some of their life decisions around career, etc. So it's very normal for them to feel stressed around that time. So I also recommend like some of the family times or spend time in some common interests, for example, playing board games together or listening to music or movies, as Nicole suggested. That just opens up a platform for them to discuss some of the matters and have an open communication. I mean, lastly, I think in terms of the youth today, they need to learn to slow down as well. There's so many things that's going on in their life right now. So keeping a balance of what is in their control and to do best with what is not. And, other than that, you could also probably, link them with some of your family members or trusted members who can give them some career suggestions and probably give them directions and expose them to some options that might make them feel comfortable.
Thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation. I really don't want to end it, but I do see that the time, we're actually past our time. It's 7:33. So I do think we need to end right now. And if we didn't answer any of your questions that you may have posted, please, once again, take a look after tonight's event on the peelschools.org website. You will find your answers there as well. And also, I've posted the brief survey, just a brief survey, just to let us know, how we can improve and what we can do next time, when we do a presentation like this. We'd love your feedback. We really do want to hear from you. And I'll pass it back to Mangaljit. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. PIC is trying to reach out to parents and provide support to parents, and we do want to reach out again through different means. So please do look up PIC on all your social media feeds. We often have conversations there and answer questions and whatnot, and this has been such a valuable conversation, and especially around these times that we're facing. So, and I want to thank everybody involved here. Thank you to our moderators and the staff, and also our IT support. Michael, thank you so much for all your support. And thank you, and good night, everyone.